Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast with James Pyle with us today. James is founder and CEO at Awareness Elevation, but also Healthcare Elevation Partners. Not his first companies. He was in the venture capital realm, I guess, like Equiterra Venture with some of his company, Cosworth Capital, and so forth. So, James, I'm glad to have you on this pod. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, awesome. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Charles. Currently, I'm focused on building out my portfolio of consulting for equity companies that I work with. And what I've done is actually throughout my work in high performance coaching and business coaching, as well as learning a bunch about biohacking and rebuilding my brain and gut health from several years ago, being absolutely just at my worst of worst, I came upon the water only fasting process. And so now currently I lead groups of founder entrepreneur men in the water only fasting process, which is what I believe one of the greatest, most sacred, ancient wisdom tools that humans have available to us. And through the process of coming through several rounds of various lengths of that water only fast, that's the mechanism that I use to qualify clients to be able to qualify for my consulting for equity portfolio. And the reason why I offer that is because being a startup founder and having started and scaled and exited several different companies, I know firsthand the struggles that those founders go through, especially as a man, especially in this world. And I also know that I'm taking a big gamble, if you will. I'm taking a big risk by betting on someone and reducing my consulting fees significantly on the front end to get a bigger slice on the back end based on what actually comes from the engagement. So I designed this mechanism currently to basically be like, if you will, kind of the entry fee into working with me on a bigger picture, longer term basis.
Interesting. Tell me about what happened in your own personal life, that crisis that led to that water fast breakthrough.
Yeah, so that actually came about a year and a half after I had lost everything. I was building a highly successful real estate investment company several years ago and was addicted to several different prescription drugs that were not prescribed to me, but I was just taking them in copious amounts and was heavily addicted. And that culminated with me losing everything and almost ending my life. And as I was standing in the mirror with my pistol in my hand, trying to figure out how to succeed when I had just failed at everything, I heard the voice of God within me say to me, how could you kill yourself when you never even knew yourself? And that's what I call my step zero moment, which is self-awareness. And from that journey, I realized that I never loved myself because I didn't like myself, because I didn't even know myself. And through the process of the aftermath of all that, and if you will, basically starting my life over in my early 30s, I discovered this process of water only fasting. And I began to experiment by doing what most people find out, which is a 72-hour fast. And then I was doing the 72-hour fast every couple months for about 3-4 years. And then I just heard the voice of God in me telling me I needed to do a 5-day fast, and then a 7-day fast, and then a 10-day fast, and then a 21-day fast, and then a 40-day fast. And so I'm still in that process of those extended fasts. My longest one to date is 22 days, which I did in January of 2025. So that's basically been like the genesis of that.
So basically, back then you just followed what society imposed on you, like wealth and success and cars and women and all of that, and you realized that this wouldn't make you happy. You still felt empty, probably still felt even more stressed, right? That's sort of what happened. Then you got into fasting. How did that help you discover more about yourself and who you are? And were there other modalities that you use to discover more information about who James is?
Yeah, so I'm glad you bring that up, Charles. And that's really where the core of my focus of my work is in helping these founder men to remember their true identity. And that's always going to be in direct conflict with the identity society is trying to tell you who you are. And it was through that process of rebuilding my health and discovering biohacking, and then always thinking like it's going to be the next supplement, or it's going to be the next cold plunge, or the next sauna, or the next workout routine, or the next diet regimen. And I was constantly seeking outside of myself for the answer. And then it wasn't until I did that first 10-day water fast back in 2022 when I had the realization that I've basically been lied to about everything for my entire life, because I'd been told that, I had to eat food every day. I was told that I had to do all these other things that the modern society had programmed me with. And when I pulled food out of the equation and I just really, really reconnected with the small, still voice within that I believe is my true self, my higher consciousness, some people call it, a higher power, God, universe, source, whatever people want to call that. It really brought me into a hyper aware state of that voice within, and the calling of that voice, the yearnings from within my soul. And that's really the primary modality, because we're in such a consumerism world where, again, it's go, go, go. It's hustle culture. It's constantly looking for the next coaching program that's going to help grow your business. It's looking for the next fitness routine or the next supplement or diet. And really, we don't need any of that. And not to sound like, cheesy or corny, there's a lot of truth in these very simple answers of timeless wisdom, things like everything that we need is already within us. And so when we go into this process, and my experience in this process is the complete removal of everything allows a person to return to their natural state and who you really truly are and who you were before the world began trying to tell you who to be. And through that process, and then through the process of creating some integration and implementation protocols to keep those awarenesses from the fast when breaking the fast, and to be able to continue to accelerate our momentum in our life and in our business. And really, it just focuses on the core principle of, the universe doesn't give us what we want, it gives us who we are. And our success is attracted to who we are. So it's about becoming that next level of person to attract that next level of success.
Right. And tell me about the awareness part when you do these water fasts, because me on my side, I did these 5 days water fast and all of that, and sort of miserable, right? Like it's manageable miserableness, I would describe it. Like I did take these electrolytes while doing it, right, to make me less miserable, and I tried a bunch of things, but it seems to me it's pretty hard to get these insights. Also, I keep on working while I do these. I don't stop. And as a general asterisk here, every spiritual or retreats that I ever did, I always have some problems sort of integrating what I've learned during these moments that are very different from my normal life. So how do you actually pay attention? How do you get these insights? Like I did go also on these long walks though, but I don't remember getting like any spiritual message during these periods.
Yeah, well, the way that I like to explain it is everybody and every body are different, right? And, I think a lot of the world, especially in the coaching realm, people want to give a prescription for like, this is the formula or this is what to do and you're going to experience that. And for me, rather than, giving a prescription, I just share a description of what my particular experience was. And it has a lot to do with, what you shared there, of what is our mindset going in? How do we approach this process? What are we doing during that process, right? Like, are we creating some time in our calendar and day to just sit and be with self? Or like you mentioned, are we like keeping our schedule packed full and just, chewing through our normal routine? And one of the things I found helpful is to definitely pare down, physical activity as well as workload during those days when possible, especially during normal meal times. So usually what we'll do in the communities is we'll do a specific series of, journaling prompts and exercises, meditations, things like that during the normal time when we would be eating, so that we can begin to become more aware of hearing that small, still voice within and that prompting from the yearning in our soul. And then in terms of, being able to actually take those upgrades with us into life, one of the biggest challenges is, and really the fasting process, the most important part is breaking the fast. And a lot of people, because, we're just, you pull the food out and you kind of white knuckle it for a few days, and then you just want to eat a whole bunch because you literally feel like you're starving. And you can actually do more damage than good depending on how you choose to break that fast. So really, it for me, it has everything to do about setting and intention, and then the container that a person, if you will, encounters while they're in that fasting process. I'm definitely a more spiritual oriented individual. So, I'm more inclined to do more praying, more talking with that voice within me. That's the voice of God, as well as listening to what it's sharing with me. And it's also something like, it's not something to just be like, oh, I'm going to do it once and I'm going to get this upgrade and be done with it. I see this as a continual process. It's about the journey, not the destination. And so it's acclimating the body to be able to do those 3-day, 5-day, 7-day, 10-day fasts and be able to mentally prepare for that. And then it's about staying with that process and continuing to return to it. And that process in and of itself will elevate awareness of that spiritual experience, if you will.
Right. Do you meditate during these processes? And also, how do you solve the shitty sleep equation that you normally get when you're fasting?
Yeah, yeah. So again, everybody and everybody are different. Some people, they sleep better than ever. Other people have like really hard time with it, right? For me, I do like to do things like, put magnesium oil on my skin later in the day and evening, which sometimes can help. Oftentimes I encourage people to use essential amino acid supplements because they don't have any calories in them and they don't do anything to interrupt the fast, but they will satiate the brain and the muscles a little bit, which can kind of help with getting better sleep. And then there are certain sleep supplements. There's one that I use that's called Tro and 3Z's, Tro Z's, and basically it's a compilation of plant compounds in this little teeny like troche that you kind of put in between your cheek and your gums for a bit and then swallow it. And so there's really nothing of any caloric value in there. So there are some things that we can do to work around all of that and be able to help to get ourselves in that place where we can get deeper sleep. And really the key of it all is though, and what I'm picking up from what you're sharing in is just, for everyone, it's different. And, for some people, it could bring awareness to self-talk, and lack of being able to wind our mind down at the end of the day. As founder entrepreneurs, as high-performing CEOs, some of us can have a real problem with actually disconnecting and unwinding. So yes, I do quite a bit of meditation regularly anyways, especially when I'm fasting. I do enjoy very light exercise. You had mentioned doing these longer walks outside. I really love to be outdoors when I'm fasting. And I do utilize some breathwork protocols throughout the day that really just it's kind of like having a snack, if you will. I do a few rounds of Wim Hof breath, and then it's like, oh, it's almost like I ate something and I'm good for a couple more hours. So, it's definitely being aware of these different factors and just bringing awareness to what are those underlying subconscious patterns that are driving our conscious reality, and bringing awareness to what are the patterns that are no longer serving us, that it's time for us to go ahead and let go of and set down.
Love that. You do a lot of retreat with men, right? Do you feel we have a men crisis? Like men don't know literally what it means to be a man. Some of them grew up without dads, and then there's hyper masculine figure which do not really represent what being a man is like Tate or Trump and these people that sort of guides people in the wrong direction, in my opinion. So, what does it mean to be a man, in your opinion? And tell us a bit more about that manlyhood crisis, that testosterone crisis we're seeing nowadays.
Yeah, that's a very great question there. So, in my interpretation of life and the role of a man, I believe a man's number one role is to provide safety and security. So, therefore, that means that a man must be dangerous. A man must be capable of extreme violence, like what Jordan Peterson talks about, and choose peace. Otherwise, that's not a peaceful man. That's just basically a pussy that couldn't defend himself or anybody else. And, I do believe that masculinity and really just identity in general is under attack and has been really since the beginning of time. And so really, I'm more in that, I don't know if you've ever heard of people, like Sigma style man versus like an alpha or a beta,
Rings
so
a
like,
bell, yeah.
yeah, Sigma men is kind of more of like your lone wolf type man, like the guy who's just, not really usually part of a community, doesn't really need followers. They can lead, but they don't have to lead. And they're usually just off doing things, conquering things, building things in silence. And they're usually too busy doing to be talking about it. And then you've got your alpha males who are, guys like you just mentioned, and most of the coaches out there, where they literally have to have a bunch of beta followers and beta clients in order to perpetuate that brokenness. And so really, rather than prescribing like, hey, this is what a man is and this is what you got to do and this sort of stuff, again, I'm more in that describer rather than prescriber mode. And that's what part of the fasting process is, because you're going to really find out who you are. I mean, you yourself know that you've done some extended fasting, and like that really will get you in touch with your manhood. When you can actually go into a process and see that everything that you're experiencing is 100% your responsibility as a man in this world, and choosing any other option really is a victim mindset. And so really, by taking that 100% responsibility for our life, that becomes the foundation of freedom. And then, of course, fulfilling our number one role, which is protection and providing for women and our loved ones. And I really do think that men have a great opportunity to be reminded of who they are and who they're really created to be. And I see that happening a lot through my coaching. Of course, I'm going to be biased to the fasting process because I love it and it's what I teach and coach on. I really think even just doing things like chopping wood and carrying water, the good old saying of like what men used to do, and like working with our hands and being outside and being active with our bodies and our minds, not just our minds and our fingers on the keyboards, if you will. I believe that can really help men step forth in their true identity and true manhood. And as a footnote on that, there's such heavy layers of indoctrination and programming and manipulation that just exist in the matrix of the societies that we live in. So a lot of people, it takes a few rounds of the fast just to begin to deprogram all of the programming that they've had throughout their entire life, telling them who they are and how they have to live.
Interesting. Yeah, to me, masculinity, I tend to view the world through biochemicals lens, so testosterone and estrogen, namely, and as long as we'll be wired through that, I will be allowed to make these oversimplification, because being a man to me, yes, about doing hard things, about suffering, right? And adapting, right? And evolving, taking risk. You mentioned wood chopping, be it ultra runs, right? Like pain festivals. You get in the pain cave for 24 hours, 48 hours at a time. Sparring is one of my favorite as well, because you learn quite quickly that when you lose your shit, you get smacked even harder. You make errors, right? It's like playing a chess game.
Yep.
And yet, I think it's about having value and having some kind of community, right? So in my case, it's promoting entrepreneurship for sure. And as long as you're living that message and you do what you say, that's my definition of it. You mentioned resetting through fasting, right? Like there's physical fasting, but there's also other kinds of fast, like technological fasting, which I've done a couple of times, and I think these are hyper impactful, right? Like if you just stop checking your phone for a while, you go walk in nature, and you just retire from civilization for some time. I think that can be immensely beneficial. Do you also preach and promote these methodologies in your groups?
Yeah, I mean, I always encourage people to be connected and return to that natural state with their own thought and their own creative mind. So many people, we've been programmed, like I was talking about earlier, looking outside ourselves for answers. And one of the biggest ones right now is AI, right? Like people are going to AI to find answers for things. We've been going on our phones and computers to go to Google to find answers for things. A lot of people don't even know that, like Nikola Tesla, the original Tesla, had trained himself how to meditate and access a theta wave brain state. And he would go into these deep meditative states, and then he would see like the invention of the Tesla coil in his imagination. And he would wake up out of his meditation and he would build it. He didn't go look on Google and try to figure out, electrical currents and all this stuff like people do today. He went into the theater of his mind and he accessed that higher consciousness through that process. So I do believe that, extended solitude can be good for men. A long trek, doing like you're talking about running ultras, or, doing a long ruck, climbing a 14,000 foot mountain. One of the things that I've found though is that a lot of times people are just state change seekers. Like they're just seeking that state change. And people get addicted to whatever the modality or mechanism is that's in front of them. So then, it's like, oh, well, now cold baths are the thing. So I'm going to do the cold baths all the time. And if I haven't had my ice bath, then something's off in my world. And again, it continues to perpetuate that brokenness that I have of optics on, of like looking outside of ourselves for that solution, right? And so really being able to fast anything can be good. Again, I don't mean to sound like I'm trying to make like an alpha statement here, but like, there's all these people that are like, oh, I fasted social media for 5 days. And it's like, that's kind of candy ass. Like if you're going to do a fast, like let's go ahead and do the real deal that our ancestors did, where we pull out food and everything, and you will really become hyper aware of who you are. I truly believe that like a 7-day water only fast is the greatest self-awareness exercise any human could do. You're going to learn more about yourself in 7 days than a lifetime of taking classes and hiring coaches and all that stuff.
Right. Two things here. Yeah, I believe not to be the greatest self-awareness, but the greatest gift you can do to your body as a biohacker for sure. That's like 100%, because it will reset. It's naturally healing. And second, I believe it's one of the quote unquote easiest thing to do, not because it's not painful, because it's hella painful, but because it doesn't cost anything, right? And most people are broke nowadays. So like, yeah, if you don't have cash, just like stop buying food for 7 days. And I will add to this that most people are fat, and yeah, maybe this wouldn't be politically correct a couple of years ago, but now can say it out loud. Like, yeah, it's not okay to be fat.
Yeah,
We're not
totally.
made to be fat. You're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing humanity a disservice, because people are paying for you to take care of you once you have these cardiac health issues and all these kinds of other weird issues that being fat causes. So yeah, I think it's one of the best remedy out there. Now we're already on time, James. Where can people find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, sure. They can find me on Instagram at my first name, James, middle initial F is in Foxtrot, last name Pyle, Pyle. So that's at James F. Pyle on Instagram, or you can find me on LinkedIn under my first and last name. You can also hit our website, awarenesselevation.com.
So it's James and Charles for another